for you to do a YouTube channel and for you to do a podcast based on outing homeboy.
Yeah.
That you had a bigger plan all along. Can you just briefly address?
All right, and basically what FG does is he pretty much explains that he really wasn't trying to build some sort of internet brand based off of exposing Mob James as a snitch. I mean, that wasn't his intentions. His intention was to come out simply because Mob James was running his mouth about FG. You know, and FG admitted it. Hey, if Mob James never disrespected me or ran his mouth about me, I would have never came out to reveal him. I would have just left the issue alone. Since he talked trash about me in a particular interview or some segment of some show, I felt the desire to actually come out and do an interview about it. What I also want to speak about is the fact that if you know me, you know that I actually got a copyright strike, and I was being threatened by Digital Soapbox Networks, which is run by, that's where Mob James' show Gangster Chronicles is on, and they actually tried to sue me, and they tried to copyright strike me because I actually recorded a few seconds of Mob James responding to the snitching allegations, and I recorded it from their channel and actually showed the comments to it, and I was just pointing out the fact that, hey, in these comments, everybody's pretty much given up on the show, and everybody's just like, yo, you guys did a terrible job at defending Mob James, and they got upset with me. The video only had 1,000 views. I only had 300 subscribers, and they actually went out of their way, and I actually beat that copyright. And I just want to speak on that. I beat that copyright strike because I didn't do anything wrong. I followed the rules. You know, you can record someone's content if you're responding to something that's newsworthy. You know, it's not like you're actually benefiting from their content. You know, you're actually using that as a guide for your content, you know. But what I want to speak on is this, you know. A lot of people are saying, hey, Mob James, this whole thing was a setup. Mob James was his character was torn down as a come-up move for FG, and I don't think that's true. I think that people really, really do like gangsters, and I think people like gangsters even better when they are no longer gangsters and they've been removed from the gangster lifestyle 20, 30 plus years, and they're doing good for themselves. They're raising their kids, they're family men, they're married, they own homes, they pay mortgages, they have investments. I think people like to see that story. I think people like to see somebody like FG, who was actually out there in the mix, around a bunch of killing, representing his hood, selling drugs, to go from that to somebody who's actually a business owner, somebody who's a mature man, a gentleman. I think people like to see that story. I think people love to see success stories. And I think that FG wasn't really familiar with the internet when he did his first interview with Alonzo. And I think once he started to get into it, he liked it. I think he liked the attention that he was getting. I think this was the first time in his life that he probably had people actually show so much interest in him. Normally in his life, in his business ventures, he would own something secretly. Like he said, yeah, I own nightclubs, but nobody knew. So for the first time, he's actually getting recognition for himself. And he's not, you know, in the background. And I think he likes the fact that people appreciate his story. I think he likes the fact that people are interested in hearing more about him. And it's just his whole vibe, you know. He doesn't, you know, he's got his own unique look. A lot of people thought he was Samoan. I think that has a lot to do with it too. He's a unique looking guy. He has a unique vibe. He's laid back, chill, you know. And yeah, he has a different vibe about himself. But you can tell he was a gangster and he was out there. But at the end of the day, people like him because he kept it real about his background. Yes, I grew up in a lovely household. Wasn't poor. Had my mother and father. I turned out to be a gangster because that's what I wanted to do. I was misguided by the streets, not because of you know, poverty or socioeconomic situations, but because I just wanted to do it, you know. People like that. As far as Mob James is continuing his podcast. Mob James is making new shows on Gangster Chronicles right now, and I think that's the best thing for him to do. At the end of the day, I think that now that this situation is virtually over, I think that Mob James really needs to simply... I would have loved to see Mob James come out and say, yes, I did it. And I know a lot of you are like, why would he do that? Why wouldn't he do that? Why shouldn't he do that? I mean, Mob James has opened up about his brother's death. He opened up about his past, feelings about death row and how he felt like he was cheated out of money and things of that nature. I just think that it can be an opportunity for the youth it's a learning tool, to just come out, say, hey, yeah, I was working for the FBI. I was bitter at death row. Death row, I felt like they cheated me out of money. I felt like death row didn't, the promises that Suge made me didn't materialize. I had access to death row and Suge Knight because I grew up with these people. So I figured, hey, I'm going to work for law enforcement because I was angry at the time. I was bitter. And I think that he can actually survive in his career. I think that he can actually still continue to be Mob James, with the full story out there. And I think that'll be a great thing for the youth to see. Yeah, you can be a big-time gangster, a killer, this ultimate gangbanger, and still be a snitch, because that's the reality of the situation. I mean, people have this perception that a snitch is a guy with glasses, some nerd, some square. No, a snitch is going to be the guy that's doing the most killing, the most drug dealing. Those are the snitches. Because they feel like, hey, nobody's going to try me. I can snitch and get away with it because everybody's scared of me. So, I mean, I just wish Mob James would have handled things differently. I think it's sad that these guys are trying to say that FG engineered this whole thing as some sort of conspiracy to start a podcast. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think you really need to conspire to make a podcast. Everybody and their mama is making a podcast these days. It doesn't really take conspirator, a conspiracy to do it. I mean, everybody has one. So, yeah, it's just, I just wish Mob James would actually come out. And what will be great? What will be great? If Mob James and FG actually had a chance to sit down on FG's new show and hash it out and talk it out like men. Peace.